Hey, what's up everybody? Today we're going to talk about the Fujifilm let me see if I can get this name right, WCL-X100 wide conversion lens. Alright, basically this is attachment accessory for the Fujifilm X100S that has been insanely popular. So really quick about the Fujifilm X100S first. Basically this is fixed focal length camera in the format of a rangefinder, meaning that the lens does not detach. It's permanently attached to the camera, and it is a great lens. It's 35mm equivalent with a f2.0 as the widest aperture, and it has been working really well. And the images coming out from this camera has been fantastic and completely comparable to my older D90 camera, the crop sensor Nikon camera. Not quite up there with my D600 yet, but definitely comparable to crop sensor, and it outputs great raw files that I can do some post-processing on. But anyways, so as I started using the X100S more, I started finding myself that obviously I'll bring this on travels, but also I like to do a lot of hiking, and I started like lugging this camera around with me on my hiking trips. The problem is the 35mm is just not quite wide enough for some of the shots that I want to do. Of course, like a lot of people say, you can kind of just frame the photo in a certain ways, but the ways I have imagined in my head, I kind of want to get the epicness of the scenery I'm looking at. And 35mm is not quite cutting it, and I don't want to just bring my point and shoot or my rely on my camera phone. So that's where this little guy comes in. Let me put the camera down. So I was looking online to see if there's any way to kind of convert the fixed 35mm focal length to something a little bit wider, and I came across this. Fujifilm released this, I think, like, what is it, a year ago or something? Don't quote me on this, but this is a relatively new accessory, along with a telephoto one that's out now. This will convert your 35mm to a 28mm wide angle lens. So again, this is a 0.8 times magnification. It will convert the fixed 35mm to 28mm equivalents. How much does that actually mean? If all the post-processing goes well, right now you should be seeing some sample images coming over your screen right now, comparing the original 35mm to what a 28mm looks like. Alright, did that work? Hopefully that did. So let's take a look at this little guy right here. So there's like a little plastic cap, and here's a little really nice pinch cap. The quality and the build is fantastic. It's just like the X100S. Now let me attach it to the X100S. In order to do that, first you gotta take off this little protection ring first. Basically just hide the treads, see? And then the converter just go right over it. Do it this way. Let's sit it right first, and then it just kind of spins in really easily. Alright, so now your camera looks like this. Color match is perfect. Material is perfect because it's the same material. Usage is super simple. Like when you slap it on, one more thing you need to do is like change the camera to wide angle mode. And here, I'm just pressing the function key right now to change the function key to wide conversion lens, and turn it on, and you'll see this little yellow dot to remind you that, hey, you're in wide conversion mode. What it does is that it does not really affect the image quality, but in the meta file, in the raw file or whatever file that you're shooting in, it will note that it is shot with 28mm equivalent instead of the standard 35mm. So this is to kind of keep your files in order, but it does not affect the image quality. If you correction, it does not affect the image quality if you're shooting in RAW, but if you're outputting in JPEG, I think it does apply the barrel distortions. fix. But the raw file, it would not impact at all. So that's something to keep in mind of. So here again, and if all goes well, another set of like comparison photo will be floating across the screen right now of the standard 35mm look, and then the 28mm look. So with this setup, I went hiking. I just kind of shoved the whole camera into my bag and went a couple trips and just see how I like it. So after using it for a while, I asked myself, okay, so this conversion lens is $300, right? At least on Amazon right now, with free shipping. And then it gives me a few extra millimeter in terms of focal length. But now I have to worry about, okay, do I use this or not? And look at the camera. Before it was flat like this. When it's in the back, it's pretty compact, right? It just takes up this much room. But now if I slap a lens on, it becomes like this. It becomes a lot more 3D. It takes up a lot more room in the pack, right? And in return, I get an image that's a couple steps back, right? In terms of like how much I can capture. Of course, you can argue that sometimes you cannot step back anymore, so you know that's a new point. That is true, but I was weighing the pros and cons. I was like, okay, is it worth it? So like $300, and then your camera becomes this much bigger. Or of course, you can argue that, okay, you know what? Before you use it, you can always like keep it off, right? But keep in mind that normally I have a filter on this. I'll take out the filter, put this guy on, take the picture, and then if I want to fit it back in the pack, I'll take this off, you know, put a filter back on, just hassle. So ultimately, I don't know. I think like it also kind of destroys how minimalist this camera is. Like this camera is meant to be just pull it out, shoot. You work with what you got, 35mm. You slap this on, it's becoming another mirrorless or DSLR. You know what I mean? So I think ultimately for me, I'll probably be returning this conversion lens. But of course, again, this is like this is different based on everybody's use case. For me, it just, I mean, it's a great piece of equipment. There's no impact of the image quality. Like image looks just like from a regular 35mm lens that's attached to the camera without anything extra on it. It's great. But for me, in terms of use case, I don't know. I don't think a trade-off is worth it. Mainly the form factor for me, not so much the cost, because I think it is worth the money. But just like, yeah, to add this much bulk, to add the complication of deciding which lens to use, now 35mm or 28mm, and to add the stress of like, oh, I gotta put this on before I take a shot, or take it off, or I need to like now fit a camera this size in my bag instead of this size, right? The stress just probably not worth the extra couple steps backwards. So that's my conclusion. Basically, the equipment itself works perfectly. It looks great, you know, but for my use, it just does not quite measure up to my expectation. I feel like if the lens instead of 28 can go all the way to 24, then I'll be worth it. It'll be worth it for me to go through the steps of like putting this on, or like go through the hassle of like dealing with camera this size versus this size. But that's just my opinion, and everybody's use case is different. So here it is, the Fujifilm WCL-X100 wide conversion lens. It's about $300 on Amazon right now. In terms of image quality, fantastic. It does what it's supposed to do with no noticeable drop in quality. However, it does add extra bulk to your camera, so it is really up to you to decide whether this is for you or not. All right, and hopefully this little review helps somebody. Talk to you guys later.